Imagine waking up in a world where a single, unwritten rule dictates whether you live or die by sunset. Long before written laws, courts, or police existed, prehistoric human survival relied entirely on a dark, invisible web of absolute taboos. These were not mere superstitious suggestions, but brutal evolutionary defense mechanisms etched into the collective primitive mind. To violate a tribal taboo was not just a social mistake, it was an immediate, terrifying sentence of death or permanent exile. In the harsh landscapes of the Pleistocene epoch, the community could not afford a single rogue member jeopardizing the entire group. Archaeologists studying deep cave networks across Western Europe have uncovered strange, repetitive patterns of ancient human behavior. At the famous site of Atapuerca in Spain, fossil evidence suggests that early human communities strictly controlled internal behavior to prevent genetic collapse. The first and most critical taboo of the ancient world revolved around the invisible boundaries of bloodlines and modern incest avoidance. Early hunter-gatherers intuitively understood that mating within the immediate family produced weak, sickly children unable to hunt or gather. To enforce this, tribes developed complex, unspoken rules that forced young adults to seek partners from completely distant, rival clans. This crucial exchange of mates occurred during massive, seasonal gathering rituals at sacred geographical landmarks across ancient Europe. A second, deeply terrifying taboo governed the treatment of the dead and the lingering fear of spiritual or physical contamination. In the dark recesses of Shanidar cave in modern-day Iraq, Neanderthal burial sites reveal a highly specific, intentional ritual pattern. Bodies were not simply discarded in the wild. They were meticulously bound, placed in specific positions, and buried facing downward. This specific downward burial position reflected a profound, universal prehistoric fear that the deceased might return to hunt the living. To ensure the spirit remained trapped deep beneath the soil, massive, heavy limestone boulders were rolled directly over the graves. Touching a rotting corpse outside of these highly controlled, sacred rituals was strictly forbidden to every single member of the clan. Anyone who dared to touch a dead body without shamanic protection was immediately declared unclean and isolated from the campsite. This spiritual taboo served a highly practical evolutionary purpose by preventing the spread of deadly, invisible pathogens through the tribe. The third major category of prehistoric taboos governed the critical distribution of food and the survival resources of the group. When a massive woolly mammoth was successfully brought down after a grueling multi-day hunt, the meat did not belong to the hunter. A strict tribal taboo forbade the hunter who struck the final killing blow from taking the finest, most choice cuts of meat. Instead, the tribal elders and the shaman controlled the distribution, ensuring that pregnant women and young children ate first. Hoarding meat or eating in secret away from the shared campfire was viewed as the ultimate, unforgivable betrayal of tribal trust. A hunter caught hiding food faced the immediate wrath of the entire community, leading to brutal physical punishment or death. The campfires themselves were protected by a series of absolute, non-negotiable spiritual and practical taboos. Letting the central sacred fire die out during a freezing, sub-zero ice age night was considered a catastrophic, cursed event. The individual assigned to watch the embers faced severe consequences, as a dead fire meant vulnerability to giant predators. Stepping over the flames or throwing inappropriate, foul-smelling waste into the cooking fire was strictly forbidden by tribal law. The fire was viewed as a living, breathing protective deity that kept the terrifying darkness of the prehistoric night at bay. Beyond the camp, specific geographical zones in the ancient landscape were marked by shamans as absolute, forbidden territory. Certain deep, twisting cave systems were strictly off-limits to everyone except the initiated shamans during sacred ritual seasons. These dark, underground chambers were believed to be the literal, pulsing womb of the earth and the realm of powerful animal spirits. Entering these sacred spaces without permission was believed to blind the offender or bring a terrible curse upon the hunting grounds. This territory taboo protected the tribe from wandering into treacherous, unstable cave systems where toxic gases or predators hid. Menstruation was another deeply misunderstood biological phenomenon that was heavily regulated by intense prehistoric tribal taboos. Women during their cycle were often forced to stay in a separate, isolated shelter built on the far periphery of the main camp. They were strictly forbidden from touching hunting weapons, as the tribe believed the scent would permanently curse the tools. Practically, the scent of blood would attract apex predators like cave hyenas and saber-toothed cats directly to the vulnerable camp. By isolating the scent, the tribe successfully minimized the risk of night raids by terrifying flesh-eating Ice Age beasts. The names of deceased tribal elders were also placed under a strict, long-lasting linguistic taboo after their passing. Speaking the literal name of a dead chief was believed to summon their ghost back from the spirit realm to haunt the living. Instead, the tribe referred to the deceased using metaphorical titles, such as the Great Bear or the Silent Hunter. This linguistic taboo allowed the community to process collective grief and prevent ideological fracturing over past tribal leadership. The sharing of water sources was managed by a strict code of environmental taboos designed to preserve life-saving resources. Urinating or bathing near the primary drinking water zone of a river stream was an offense met with immediate violence. The tribe instinctively knew that dirtying the water source would bring mysterious, wasting sicknesses that could wipe out the children. Animals used as tribal totems were also protected by highly specific, seasonal consumption taboos that regulated hunting patterns. If a clan claimed the cave wolf as their sacred ancestral totem, killing a wolf was strictly forbidden, except in absolute self-defense. This clever religious taboo prevented the overhunting of critical predator species, maintaining a delicate balance in the local ecosystem. The manufacturing of sacred stone tools and weapons was accompanied by its own set of rigid ritualistic taboos. A flint knapper working on an exquisite Solutrean blade could not be disturbed or approached by uninitiated youths. The dust and shards from the stone-shaping process were viewed as spiritually charged and highly dangerous to the untrained eye. If a weapon broke prematurely during a hunt, it was often blamed on a hidden violation of a taboo during its creation. The broken weapon would be ritually buried or discarded in a specific manner to appease the angry spirits of the stone. Deformed or unusually shaped newborn infants were often viewed through the dark lens of tribal taboo and spiritual omen. A child born with severe physical anomalies was sometimes believed to carry the curse of an enemy clan's dark magic. The shaman would decide whether the infant could remain within the community or if it had to be returned to nature. This brutal practice, though horrifying to modern standards, was a desperate measure to ensure the high mobility of the nomadic tribe. Strangers approaching the tribal territory from distant lands were viewed with extreme suspicion and placed under immediate taboo rules. A traveling foreigner could not enter the circle of the campfire until a specific, lengthy purification ritual was performed. The shaman would blow sacred smoke over the stranger to clear away any hostile spirits or unknown, invisible diseases they carried. This ritual boundary protected the isolated tribe from devastating epidemics that their immune systems could not possibly fight off. The collection of medicinal herbs and psychoactive plants was a privilege strictly reserved for the oldest, wisest tribal shamans. Any common member of the tribe caught picking these sacred plants faced immediate, severe banishment from the group. This taboo prevented accidental poisonings from toxic look-alike plants that grew abundantly throughout the ancient forest floors. It also consolidated spiritual and political power firmly within the hands of the tribal elders, maintaining crucial social hierarchy. Severe weather events like lightning storms and eclipses triggered instant, collective adherence to emergency taboo behaviors. When thunder rolled across the plains, the entire tribe would cease talking and huddle together in absolute dead silence. Making loud noises during a storm was believed to attract the direct, fatal wrath of the sky gods down upon the shelter. Practically, remaining completely silent allowed the tribe to listen for falling trees or approaching predators utilizing the storm's cover. Dreams were viewed not as mere imagination, but as actual, literal journeys of the soul into the dangerous spirit world. If a hunter dreamed of a specific valley filled with blood, a strict taboo would prevent the tribe from hunting there for weeks. This dream-based taboo allowed the subconscious mind to process subtle environmental warnings that the waking mind missed. The personal possessions of a deceased individual were considered highly radioactive with the lingering spiritual energy of death. The clothes, ornaments, and simple tools of the dead were usually burned completely or buried deep alongside their owner. Keeping the clothing of a dead person was believed to slowly drain the life force of the living wearer until they perished too. This practice effectively halted the spread of parasites like lice and fleas that remained on the garments of the sick. Ritual scarification and tattooing were used to permanently mark those who had violated minor taboos but were allowed to stay. A specific mark on the cheek would warn neighboring clans that this individual was prone to lying or stealing food. These visible social scars acted as a prehistoric criminal record system, ensuring total accountability across different nomadic bands. The elders utilized terrifying campfire ghost stories to deeply drill these vital taboos into the minds of young children. Children were told of invisible, flesh-eating monsters that lived in the forbidden zones beyond the safety of the firelight. These scary psychological constructs successfully prevented curious toddlers from wandering off into the pitch-black, predatory night. The punishment for breaking the most sacred taboos was often a ritualistic, highly coordinated execution by the entire tribe. To avoid the spiritual curse of spilling a clan member's blood directly onto the earth, unique methods of execution were used. The taboo breaker would be tied to a wooden stake and left exposed to the freezing elements or the local wildlife. Alternatively, the entire community would participate in throwing heavy stones from a distance until the offender was crushed. By having everyone throw a stone, no single individual could be blamed by the spirits for taking a clansman's life. The most lingering and psychologically agonizing punishment, however, was the sentence of absolute, permanent social exile. An exiled individual was stripped of their weapons, their tools, and their identity, then cast out into the trackless wilderness. In the unforgiving prehistoric world, a lone human without a tribe was a walking corpse destined to die within days. The exile would succumb to extreme hypothermia, starvation, or the crushing jaws of a hunting pack of prehistoric predators. The psychological dread of this isolation kept even the most rebellious individuals completely compliant with tribal laws. Every taboo, no matter how bizarre or cruel it appears to us today, was forged in the fires of evolutionary survival. The tribes that developed and strictly enforced these invisible rules survived the brutal challenges of the ancient world. The lawless groups that ignored these boundaries perished, leaving no descendants to carry their chaotic legacy forward. Modern laws, religious commandments, and cultural etiquettes are the direct, polished evolutionary descendants of these ancient taboos. We still carry the deep, instinctual remnants of this ancient psychological programming within our modern brains today. The next time you feel an irrational wave of fear in the pitch darkness, remember the ancient rules that kept us alive. The survival of our species was bought with the rigid discipline of these unspoken, primeval laws of the wild. Taboos regulated even the simplest daily actions, like how a hunter sharpened his spear before dawn. If a toolmaker used the wrong type of riverstone, the tribe believed the weapon would betray its owner in battle. This psychological conditioning ensured that only the highest quality materials were selected for life-saving hunting gear. During times of severe drought, the taboos regarding resource preservation became exponentially more intense and unforgiving. The primary watering hole became a hyper-sacred zone where no weapon could be drawn under penalty of immediate death. Even rival tribes would respect this neutral water taboo, understanding that conflict would ruin the resource for everyone. The transition of a boy into a hunter was marked by a terrifying initiation ritual designed to break his childhood identity. The youth was subjected to sensory deprivation in the deepest part of a cave for days without food or light. Here, the shaman would whisper the most guarded, secret taboos of the clan directly into his ear. If the boy panicked or cried out, he failed the trial and was relegated to menial tasks forever, forbidden from hunting. The elders watched the stars intently, creating cosmic taboos based on the movements of constellations across the night sky. A red-tinted moon meant an immediate halt to all planned hunting expeditions, forcing the tribe to hide in absolute silence. These astronomical taboos allowed the tribe to rest periodically, preventing physical exhaustion during seasonal shifts. Food preparation was also an area dominated by strict, fear-based rules to ensure safety. Meat from an animal found already dead in the wild was placed under a strict, absolute consumption taboo. Only animals freshly killed by human hands or observed predators could be harvested for the village cookpot. This simple rule saved countless prehistoric lives from the invisible horrors of deadly botulism and anthrax spores. The human hair was believed to hold a portion of an individual's soul and life essence. Cutting hair was a highly ritualized event that could only happen during specific phases of the lunar cycle. The shorn hair had to be carefully buried in secret locations so enemies could not use it for dark, sympathetic magic. This taboo prevented the spread of scalp infections and kept the campsite free of loose hair that could contaminate food. Laughing or mocking a physical deformity in another tribal member was strictly forbidden by an ancient moral taboo. The tribe believed that mocking a curse would cause the spirits to inflict the exact same deformity upon your own children. This kept the small, interconnected group cohesive and prevented internal fights that could turn deadly. When a woman was pregnant, she was placed under a protective network of highly specific dietary taboos. She was forbidden from eating the meat of certain predatory birds, fearing the child would be born with weak vision. While superstitious, this effectively diverted the most nutrient-dense, easily digestible foods directly to expectant mothers. The boundaries of the campsite were marked with physical totems, like carved bones or painted stones. Crossing these boundary markers after dark, without a burning torch, was an absolute taboo for any clan member. This rule kept the population safely contained within the protective radius of the camp's defensive fires. It also made it incredibly easy to identify approaching enemies or wild animals trying to sneak into the living quarters. The division of labor between genders was enforced not by physical force, but by deep-seated psychological taboos. A gatherer attempting to forge weapons faced intense social shaming and spiritual condemnation from the community elders. This rigid specialization allowed the tribe to maximize efficiency in a world where a single mistake meant starvation. Old age was respected not just for wisdom, but because surviving elders were seen as masters of navigating taboos. An elder who had lived 60 winters was viewed as a semi-divine figure protected by the spirits themselves. Their word on tribal law was absolute, and questioning their decisions was a taboo that carried instant exile. This total deference to authority provided a stable social structure that preserved vital historical knowledge through oral traditions. When two friendly tribes met to trade goods, they engaged in a complex ritual of gift-giving to break the taboo of suspicion. Failing to offer a gift of equal value was seen as a declaration of hidden, hostile intent. This trading taboo laid the groundwork for early human economics, diplomacy, and intertribal peace treaties. The bones of hunted animals could not be carelessly broken or thrown to the camp dogs without proper respect. A strict taboo demanded that the large marrow bones be cracked open cleanly and the remains placed in a central pit. The tribe believed that if they disrespected the bones, the animal's spirit would warn its herd to avoid the hunters. This ritualized disposal kept the immediate living area clean, preventing the accumulation of sharp bone fragments that caused injuries. The evolution of human morality is entirely rooted in these desperate, ancient rules of prehistoric survival. We did not survive because we were the strongest or fastest creatures on the prehistoric landscape. We survived because we learned to conquer our individual desires through the absolute power of the tribal taboo. The invisible chains of our ancestors are the very reason we are standing here, ruling the modern world today.